The next part of the lecture is a brief section on climate science and climate policy. So we're really focused on just kind of the science and implications up till now. And I want to do just a couple slides on the policy side of things. So the first thing is talk a little bit about what science can do for policy and what science can't do. So science can outline the possible futures. It can tell us what's likely to happen, why it's happening, why we believe that. It can help us understand what the consequences might be of different amounts of climate change or different paths that we might take forward. And it can give those probabilities and those uncertainties. So it can also tell us what they don't know. So for example, exactly where those tipping points are is an important one. What science can't do is it can't tell us what exactly is dangerous or what level is too much for the world is the point we have to do something. It can't tell us how to trade off the risks we have in climate with other risks in the world or with economic issues or any other environmental issue. And it can't tell us how to make judgments about uncertainty. So it can tell us what the uncertainty is or what they believe it is. But what we actually do about that and what policy choices we make are in the political realm and not in the science realm. One of the particular challenges for climate change policy is that the greenhouse gases, many of them stay in the atmosphere for a very long time, so hundreds of years. And the absolute amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is what affects the greenhouse warming. So they stay there for a long amount of time and they accumulate, and that overall number, that magnitude, is what matters. But the only thing that we're really able to affect as policymakers is the rate of greenhouse gas emissions. So we can change the input that we're doing now and the rate that we're doing that over time. But we don't really have an ability to change the overall amount of greenhouse gases that are already in the atmosphere, for example. So to stabilize that overall amount that's in the atmosphere, we have to change that rate by quite a bit to have a large effect. So this makes policymaking very difficult. You're looking at very long time scales. You're looking at a relatively small lever that you have to change the overall effect, and you still have to cause fairly large effects in the near term. So one of the ways that we coordinate internationally the issue of climate change is through the Framework Convention on Climate Change. The objective of the FCCC is to prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with climate. And as you've probably read in one of the readings, there's not a definition for dangerous, but it does cover a lot of different areas that are affected by climate. So it looks at ecosystems, it looks at food supply, it looks at sustainable development. It has the principle of equity involved in it, though again, that isn't defined specifically, how equity should be interpreted and what that means when you deal with climate change globally. They have common but differentiated responsibility, which essentially is taken to mean that some of the industrialized nations, the nations that have driven a lot of the global warming so far, contributed the most to greenhouse gases, are the ones that are going to have the most responsibility in the near term to deal with climate change. And they also use the principle of precaution, which is something I know a lot of you wrote about in one of your reading critiques a while ago. And the idea there is that even if you don't have perfect scientific knowledge, and that doesn't exist, so you probably won't, you can't use that as a reason not to act. So you need to take precaution, you need to deal with the risks by being careful, essentially by having precaution. The original commitments were to get to 1990s levels by 2000. And the Framework Convention also is used to coordinate a lot of other activities. So you all know Professor Hultman is down in Durban, South Africa right now at one of the committees of the parties gatherings this year.